Some people say I'd make a pretty good journalist, and I've covered stuff like WIA elections seen nowhere else. I could do more stories on those who claim to represent us, or maybe look at our exam system. But I think there's other topics that would interest more people. Take amateur call signs. There is nothing more that amateurs obsess over than their call signs, other than possibly who gets what in terms of license category. Call signs even distort contest rules, so that you can get bonus points in some contests for working prefixes that have long lost their geographical significance. That's part of the reason why ardent contesters push for special contest call signs. But when you look at the actual technical or operating achievement, it's little more than stamp collecting. It's like trying to make everyone rich by printing more money. Anyway, that's just a side note. The real topic of this video is reserved call signs. There is such a thing as a reserved call sign list. That is, call signs, even if they are unallocated to anyone, you cannot have. Some example of letter blocks that contain reserved call signs are published in the core book. Others were not published. Until this year, that is. Someone, obviously interested in call sign issues, put in a Freedom of Information request to the Australian Communication and Media Authority. Where requests are granted, ACMA must publish the documents on its website so everyone can read them. There are 5 documents released. 4 concerned the Australian Maritime College, who recommends call signs. Number 5 is of most interest, being the reserved list of call signs. Before we take a look, here's what AMC publish in their call sign template. These days, 3-letter suffixes can be foundation, standard or advanced, with the old differentiation gone. The R's remain reserved for repeaters and beacons. There is, however, no mention of the QAA to QZZ block. These have not been allocated due to apparent confusion with Q signals, although there's nothing here saying they can't be. And countries like the US allocate calls with Q suffixes, apparently without problems. Anyway, onto the reserved list. I'll include a link below if you want to download it. Note though, it's over 6 months old, due to the FOI request date. There are certain patterns in the list. The first are call signs of hams who have become silent keys. Unless you have permission from the family, there is a certain period where they can't be reallocated. More of interest are the never ever pile, those call signs that are reserved indefinitely. Oddly, none of the Qs are shown. Maybe their system is hardwired to reject any application for these. This, however, cannot be said for the 3-letter R series, which, although mainly for repeaters and beacons, have occasionally gone to individuals and clubs. Most notably those associated with Royal Australian Navy or signals groups. Moving on, there are S series call signs. These have historically been Scout call signs. SAB to SDZ in all states remain in the reserved list for events like Jamboree on the Air. That's over 100 call signs per call area, though I'm not sure if they've ever all been used at once. Girl guide groups also historically have call signs. They are GGA to GGZ. However, there's only a quarter of them compared to Scouts. Maybe there's an assumption that girls are only 1/4 likely as boys to be interested in radio. Interesting how you've got these historical differences and biases that remain to this very day. Up the alphabet to the W's. WI series suffixes have been used either by the WIA affiliated clubs, especially in Queensland, or WISN groups for civil emergency work. So WIA to WIZ is either already allocated or reserved. Here's another. IYA to IYZ. reserved for International Year celebrations. Now these were quite big 30 or 40 years ago, but their profile has dropped. These days there seems to be a day, week, month or year for almost anything, with many often overlapping. Don't ask me how long ago I last heard one of those IY stations as a special event call, but I think their use now would be very seldom, if at all. I've been boring so far, haven't I? Now onto the schoolyard stuff. There are other three-letter call signs on the reserved list, and it's not just due to silent keys. You can tell that by seeing the consistency. VK0 to VK9. The same suffixes are on the list for all call areas. Pig, that's right. If you ask for pig in a suffix, you won't get it, assuming the reserved call sign list is still used. Having said that, this wasn't always the case. There was a VK2 PIG in the 90s, and a VK6 PIG right now. It's a club call sign. The holder, Ham College in WA. I'll leave you to find any others. There might even be non-silent key but still reserved two-letter calls. Though again, like pig, they might have been allocated in the past and be still held. Alright, this is why you're still watching. F calls. The letter F has an inordinate number of four-letter, though by no means all obscene, words and contractions. Not surprisingly, about 80% of the reserved call sign list comprises F call signs, and only a tiny proportion would be silent keys. The list is huge. You can be a funk, but not a fink. You can be a fat, but not a fatty. You can be a fox, but not a foxy. Or you can be a foal, but not a fool. All the latter are reserved. FWIA is also reserved, but I know of no use of it by the WIA in any state. Anyway, with no more four-letter F calls being allocated, according to AMC, the reserved list, if it still exists, has got a lot shorter. And I suspect this will cut their need to say no to applicants with a certain sense of humour.